All right, back on the hardwood now.
I'm ready, man. This is the era of Knicks awesomeness.
Yeah, Knicks awesomeness. We don't really see another era of Knicks awesomeness for a while.
Maybe right now, you don't know. They're having a great start to the season.
Hell yeah, they are. Go Knicks. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Sports Experience Podcast. I am your co-host, Dom DiTolla, sitting alongside co-host Chris Quinn. And we are getting into some NBA action today with one of the best players of the 1960s and 1970s.
Yeah, we're talking Walt Frazier bringing those championships to those classic Knicks teams, and just probably one of the best point guards, ever, really.
And just for men enthusiasts.
Oh, my God. He was one of the first. I thought about this. He was really one of the first, fashion guys, like Allen Iverson, where other guys were like, oh, we can, dress up off the court. And he was like, yeah, that's right.
Dude, he dressed like fucking Dolomite. Just like every pimp from that era, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he had that fashion. He had that style.
Oh, totally, yeah. Walt Frazier, born March 29th, 1945 in Atlanta, Georgia. Walter Frazier Jr., and the oldest of 9 kids.
Yep.
Which is crazy to think about. But,
yeah, having that big of a household, I always am astonished at. And just thinking about having 11 people in your house. That's ridiculous.
Well, my mom had, at one point, 10 growing up, which it's like, how many mouths do you have to feed at some point? Holy cow. But was a great athlete growing up. Just a fantastic all-around athlete.
We've said this about a ton of these athletes. They kind of are able to pick and choose because they're always, great football players, great baseball players, great basketball players.
Just like Walt was.
Yeah.
And I'll say this about him. What I found so interesting in high school at David Tobias Howard High School, which was a segregated school in Georgia.
Yep.
Because men of their time, Chris.
Men of their time.
Men of their time. He was a quarterback in football.
All right. I was wondering if you're going to say this quote.
He was a catcher in baseball. And he was the point guard on the basketball team, which are all the most important positions, the one where usually your smartest player is always there. And he dominated all three.
Your captain.
Yeah, your captain, basically.
Up
the middle, all your power up the middle in baseball.
Your general, your floor general, all of that. And you saw it literally in every single sport. I thought it was interesting because he was a really great high school quarterback.
And then he got the Charlie Ward treatment, man.
Well, he had the statement before Charlie.
Yep.
He literally said, I've never seen a black quarterback in the NFL. That doesn't exist. I'm going to play basketball.
And this is pre-Warren Moon. So we're talking about in the long, long ago of student athletes.
Well, they were still segregated.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
just to put it in perspective, it was still ridiculous.
Yeah, but he accepts a basketball scholarship because, of course, and this is what he goes on to later do, to Southern Illinois University, which at that time was a Division II school because the NCAA was weird like that. Got the Charlie Ward treatment, and in 64 and 65, he was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, had a great, and this is something that I thought was so interesting about the difference between D1 and D2, Division 1 and Division 2 was not that big. So a Division 2 team, if a Division 2 team could really match up with a Division 1 team, and we see that they go into the Division 2 finals and
1965,
and actually lose against Jerry Sloan and Evansville.
Jerry Sloan was famously an NBA player and later even more famously coach of those great Jazz teams in the 90s.
Yes,
he
exactly.
was a great coach. Lost 85-82 in overtime. But 1966 was not academically eligible, so he lost a college season.
I thought that was interesting. And in this time, this is when Southern Illinois University is literally trying to become a D1 program.
Which they are, and they're a decent D1 basketball program now.
But that's the thing is they had to lose out on their biggest player right in the midst of them being like, well, we really want to be a D1 school. They're like, where's Walt? He's like, oh, he's studying. He needs to study. Sorry, he messed up last year. So
it's a lot, Walt. No,
but yeah, he misses out on 66, which nowadays is absolutely crazy to think of a player missing out on a year. They would literally just be like, all right, well, I'm going to go to the NBA or Europe or where, you know what I mean?
Exactly. But then it's like, oh man, I have to stay in school to improve my draft status, because Lord knows how high he would have been drafted if he just left.
Nothing. I mean, he was a D2 guy who
was good,
but like we said, like when he comes back in 67, they're in Division 1
and they're really good
and they're a great
team. Makes a great team even better.
Yep.
He leads the Salukis all the way to the NIT tournament final, where they win 71-56 over Marquette.
Yes.
Which is a very big school, particularly later in the 1970s under Al McGuire. And the game is played, or the Final Four is played in Madison Square Garden, which will definitely come back into play.
This is the last, he plays in the last college game to ever get played at MSG. The old MSG. Yeah. And I thought that was so interesting. Like, you could almost see where he was going to get drafted.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure there were plenty of Knicks scouts at that game where they saw the MVP of that tournament named Walt Frazier.
Yes. So they were like, look, this guy could be our franchise player.
And he was such a good point guard. And he had size for that era. He was like 6'4", 200 pounds.
I wanted to bring this up every time I think of a point guard from this era, because in my delusion, I'm like, I could play in that era because point guards were 5'9", and then I look at Walt Frazier. He's like, no, I'm 6'4", man. Like,
but it's like, oh,
it wasn't a new thing. I was the best point guard. I'm 6'4". You, Chris Quinn, could not have played basketball ever. And it's just like, damn it, man. I want to be Bob Cousy.
Would you care for some Just for Men with Keith Hernandez? Anyway, he's drafted 5th in 1967 by the New York Knicks, drafted 5th overall, and plays 74 games, 9 points a game, 4.1 assists per game, and is an all-rookie player. You know he's going to be a star.
Well, this is the thing, this is the NBA back then, was they were kind of folding them into this team that was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And he was showing them, like, hey, I can be this captain.
Exactly. And he's showing, established guys like a Willis Reed or a Bill Bradley, and then they're later to get Dave DeBusschere down the line. But, like, they're really building something in New York, which is strange to say for basketball.
Well, it's strange to say. I've seen somebody say this. They were like, do you really want another Knicks championship? And he's like a huge Knicks fan, and he was just like, no, I want the Knicks to be ran competently, because they are just the worst franchise. Yeah. And that's the thing from this era where they really built this
they were
great
just
team.
Very smart, and not being like, let's put everything in our Patrick Ewing basket.
Oh my God, yes. But then he really becomes the player that we see in 68, 69.
Yeah.
His second year, you see him be like, I can run this team.
Yeah, and he's running them right into some very exciting times for New York. 17.5 points a game, almost 8 assists. And this is what I loved about his game, too. He was a high rebound guy for a point guard.
Yep.
He averaged over 6 rebounds this year. Makes the playoffs, does awesome in the playoffs, has over 21 points a game, 9 assists, almost 7.5 rebounds, but they lose in the Eastern Finals against those dirty Celtics.
Well, this is something that we see is he actually plays better in the playoffs, which the great players do.
Oh, yeah. And I should mention at this time he earned his nickname Clyde.
Oh, yes, yes.
Because he looked like the gentleman who played Clyde in the Bonnie and Clyde movie, because he always wore that fedora.
The fedora with his big-ass jackets.
Platform shoes. Yep. Just looking like a straight-up pimp in a positive way.
Oh, my God. He was just looking great. Man of his era, and I think that's the first time I ever used that in a positive manner.
Yeah.
Because every time we say it on this podcast, we're like,
those connotations.
Yeah. And literally we're just like, no, he looked amazing.
But this is like fun and cheeky 1960s, 70s like style, like funk, just awesome. But 69-70 is when they finally put it all together.
Well, this is when, the Knicks put it together. And making the Eastern Conference Final in his second year, you can kind of see like, oh, this is going to be, because like we were saying before the podcast, the Celtics were starting to really
they're just getting
go on
old.
They're really going on
old.
Everybody's 34, you know what I mean?
How many playoff runs and championship runs have they had in a row? They've essentially played the core of that franchise like an extra 2 to 3 seasons, like we talked about in the Bossy episode with the Islanders.
Exactly.
That was so impressive. But
so first All-Star game.
69-70, he put up 43 against the Rockets that year.
Which is rare for that era. That's something that you have to see. Like, he was a scoring machine when he needed to be.
Yeah, but he was just an all-around awesome point guard.
Oh, man.
There wasn't like a deficiency in his game.
No.
Like, the guy could just do everything,
Like,
and everyone rallied around him.
Like you were saying, he has the standard points, assists, but he also comes up with those steals and those rebounds, which sometimes you don't see in a point guard, and when you do, you're just like, oh my God, he helps our team so much.
Yeah, because unlike Iverson, you never saw any rebounds on the stat sheet, but you saw the steals.
Yeah.
You always saw the steals with him. But the first of 7 All-Star appearances, I did want to point out, and he made the NBA. They made the NBA Finals with a 60-22 record,
Which is so good.
That's amazing. They started the season 23-1, so like right out the gate, you knew that they're going to be in the mix.
Yep.
Right. They beat the Bullets and Bucks in the East, and then sets up probably one of the greatest NBA Finals ever played in 1970. Because they're playing Wilt the Stilt and those Lakers.
And there's these matchups with like Wilt and Willis Reed.
Yeah.
And
Willis Reed's given up probably close to half a foot to Wilt, too. And yet he's so tough. He's like an old oak tree, just like bowing, one of the greatest centers of all time up.
Yes.
And he's handling him pretty decent because through the first 5 games, it's still, a competitive series, and then Willis Reed gets hurt.
He gets hurt, and then they do something that is so from this time where they were just like, all right, we're going to put you out there and see if you can go. And I think he went for like 2 minutes, and then...
But he scored the first 2 points.
Yep.
And we talked about it in that Wilt episode where he's like, I don't want to bow him up. That man is hurt.
I know.
And then he drains the first shot, and then it's like, we're in such an analytics-based, era of all sports where it's like, oh, nobody rides high on emotion. You have to get into the numbers. Willis Reed making that shot just sent like, a spark into that team to be like, we're not losing this game.
Yeah, no, seriously. He came out and energized the team because that's all he played. Yeah. He played for 2 minutes, went down, and then we see possibly the greatest Game 7 ever in basketball.
And Walt is the best player in this best game of basketball.
Well, this is what I mean, is his Game 7, I think, is the greatest Game 7 we'll ever see. The game itself is really great, but what he does in this game is so ridiculous. Pretty much the entire offense for the entire game goes through Walt Frazier.
And you know what? When you look back at his high school career, that just seems like the guy that he was. He wanted every game that he played in to flow through him. Not because he was selfish, but he was just like, I am the MF in charge,
Yep.
And after a season where he averaged almost 21 points a game, a regular season, 8 assists and 6 rebounds. Chris, why don't you break down his Game 7 stat line?
Game 7, he has 36 points, 19 assists, 7 rebounds, and 6 steals. Just to put it in perspective, in a Game 7,
which is almost a quadruple double,
74 points had to go through him. So he either scored it or assist on it. He almost had 10 rebounds, and he almost had 10 steals. So literally, like, the entire game, he pretty much put the Knicks on his shoulders there, especially with Willis Reed going out. It's such an interesting time because he's still really young.
Yeah, and could you imagine just being the Lakers after so many times failing to the Celtics, and then you're like, who's this Frazier guy?
Oh my God, especially Game 7 where you think Reed's injured, you're just like, oh no, this is us, we're going to take it.
We got
who's standing in our way?
Wilt and his
Walt Frazier.
Yeah, and his short shorts that you almost bought.
Oh my God, if anybody wants to hear that story, the only sports memorabilia that I wanted to spend like real money on, I found
the stories those shorts could tell.
I found a signed, I don't know how he signed and just went with it, but a signed copy or a signed shorts that he wore. I should have bought it. It was a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying.
It's like a down payment on a house, but I want these shorts.
Yes. There's a little dribble in there.
Maybe
basketball. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. 70-71, people are thinking they're going to repeat, and
they really could have.
They really could have, and Walt had a great, another great season. He had 21.7 points a game, 6.7 assists, and then 6.8 rebounds.
Yeah.
Which is pretty darn good.
No, I like it.
And they make the playoffs, pretty easy regular season, and they end up getting upset by the Washington Bullets.
Yeah.
Or the Baltimore
Bullets at the time.
With a gentleman named Wes Unseld on there. You should listen to that episode.
Definitely.
Huge afro and great rebounder.
But they were saying the main reason, obviously, why they lost was Earl the Pearl out there.
Playing guard for the Bullets there, yeah.
And they were saying that Walt really couldn't D him up. Like, when he wanted to score, he would essentially score.
And Walt was a great defender. And he would have played in this era really well because he was like a no-contact defender.
Yes.
He would describe it like, no, I want to lull these guys to sleep. I want to make them think what I'm going to do. I don't want them to set me up. I want them to create confusion. And he was like, the indecision is where I do my best work. And Earl the Pearl is really the guy that gives him the most issues because he's really good.
And that's
also
what happens.
The
Bullets end up knocking him out. And really, the Knicks were tipped to do a back-to-back. And it was surprising that they get knocked out really early by the Bullets.
Yeah, but the Knicks front office has a plan up their sleeve heading into the next season to upgrade their backcourt.
Well, this is where you see some of these, because we were talking about this Knicks team could have been a dynasty. They're not. But this is where you see like a super team, quote unquote, come together, because this backcourt is like the best backcourt of this era by far.
Best of the era and possibly top 5 all time, if not maybe top 3.
I'm thinking,
how good they are.
No, you're right.
I mean, they're completely legitimate because before the season, they actually trade for Earl Pearl from Washington/Baltimore. I forget what the name of them they are at that point. But anyway, they trade for him, and people were a little bit like, how are these two guys going to mesh? You know, they're kind of different style type players. Earl Pearl is more of a scorer, and, you know, Walt has a better kind of all-around game. But you know what? It worked like a charm, dude.
Well, they said that they were unclear as to how well they were going to work together because they both really were running the point almost, and they let Earl really be that shooting guard that can just slash and
create by himself. Yeah, just like, and Walt probably knew this and was like, oh, no, he's hot. I'm getting him the ball.
No, yeah, straight up. Like, he was aware. He was just like, no, we're just going to make this team better. And they were called the Rolls Royce, the backcourt, because
they don't make nicknames like that anymore.
Yeah, because they were just so choice. That's the thing. They were such a great backcourt, and we see this,
and they're both smooth.
Yeah, you know, that's what I wanted. Yes,
smooth.
For this era too, they were both almost like same style in that smooth, you know.
And it's hilarious because this season, Walt actually has his career high in regular season points a game. He has 23.2.
Well, it opens it up for him. That's what Earl really does. We were talking about it because so much more attention is going to be drawn away from Walt.
And 6.7 rebounds. He has his assist dip, but that's more likely because Earl the Pearl is there.
Yeah.
But still, they roll through the playoffs, and they get all the way to the finals. Unfortunately, this is the year where Wilt the Stilt and the Lakers finally break through.
Which I was
finally.
I was kind of surprised if you look at this Knicks team, because they really could have had this dynasty sewn up, beating the Bullets the year before, but now bringing Monroe in.
This could have been like, we're talking about a minimum 8, Pete.
Yeah, no, they seriously could have had 4. That's the thing that's crazy.
Yeah.
And they don't. And the Lakers were just the better team in this series.
I mean, law of averages says a team with Wilt the Stilt and Jerry West and all of those players, eventually they had to win at some point.
Yes.
Right? But 72-73, it's still more of the same for Walt and the Knicks.
They're the best team in the East. Mm-hmm. There really isn't. The Celtics are done at this point. And
57-25 record. Yep. He, in addition to over 21 points and almost 6 assists, he has a career high 7.3 rebounds. When is the last time you saw a point guard averaging that many rebounds a game? That's like a small forward number.
Yeah.
Or a power forward number. That's crazy.
No, yeah. It's quite the statistic that he constantly keeps dragging down 7 boards a season.
And his postseason stats are almost identical to his regular season stats, which is just like you were mentioning before, the best players always come up big in the best games.
Yep.
They really do. And they enter the 73 playoffs and roll all the way to the finals in a rematch with those Lakers.
And this is what we were talking about with Earl coming in. Was Walt was a great defender, But he said when Earl the Pearl came in, like it made him a better defender because he could literally practice against him every single.
Oh, I know.
And they were talking about one of the things that doesn't get mentioned in this series is like Walt literally closed down Jerry West.
Yeah, he drove Jerry West nuts.
And that's what, I mean, really drove them to this championship, which if you look at their first championship, it was that Game 7 that he had.
Yeah.
And this one was him just locking down Jerry West. And then
they win
Lakers,
in 5 games.
I was going to say Lakers just not being able to do anything.
They had no answer for that Knicks team. And to date, 1973, the last New York Knicks team to win an NBA title, which is very strange. But it's been a very strange trip for that franchise since then.
Yeah.
But
it's been a lot of downs.
A lot of downs. 73-74, though. Just still rolling right along. Just keeps making all-star games. 20 points, almost 7 assists, 6.7 rebounds a game. But they're knocked out by the Celtics and in the playoffs. And I think this is kind of the time where you start seeing cracks.
Yep.
Because this is probably maybe year 5 or 6 for like that core group of players, a lot of whom are a little bit older than Walt is as well. So it's like, that window's closing very rapidly.
Walt was the young guy in this crew, and you could see that overall the team was definitely falling apart.
Yeah, in 74-75, they lose again in the playoffs to the Rockets.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, what are we doing here? And then he's still, competing in an all-star level, 21.5 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds, 75-76, though. That marks the first season they missed the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And the wheels kind of start falling off from there. For the franchise itself, they know they're in need of another rebuild. Averages under 19 points, 6 assists, almost 7 rebounds. And then 76-77, this is kind of the last of his years, I believe, with the New York Knicks.
Yeah, they end up trading him.
Yeah, I mean, and you can tell his productivity is going down. 17.5 points, 5.3 assists, and only 3.9 rebounds. And after missing the playoffs that year, 7 straight All-Star games, 70-76. He was the All-Star Game MVP in 1975, actually. Yep. He still holds the assist record for the Knicks, but set all of the records that Patrick Ewing later broke for like points in games played, because he was a Knicks lifer up until 77-78.
And he played just 2 years with the Cavs, and it was
he barely played.
I was going to say he played I think 20 games one season, but when he retired, he had the record holder for field goal attempts, field goals made, free throws, points, and he still holds the assist record. Ewing broke all the other ones.
Yeah, which, of course, it's Patrick Ewing. But, he finished his career with 18.9 points a game, 6.1 assists, and 5.9 rebounds. For a point guard?
For a point guard.
Oh, my gosh.
You'd be happy if your power forward has that.
And he was just a humble dude. He would refer to everything as, that's a decent night's work.
Yep.
Which is like, man, what better leader could you have as a point guard? And this is especially an era where the best players are generally centers.
Oh, yeah. This is a center-driven era without a doubt. So, yeah, he was really great.
I had brought it up before. These are his season stats in comparison to his regular season. Every category I list is better.
Yep. Every single one.
20.7 points a game, 6.4 assists, 7.2 rebounds. That's amazing.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That is amazing. And it's not like he's one of those, Robert Ory's that just somehow turns it on and finds himself and steps up to the occasion in the playoffs. It's like, this is like the best player.
Yeah.
And he's getting better as the season goes on in the more important games. But made the Hall of Fame, obviously.
Yeah, without a doubt.
1996, one of the NBA's 50 greatest players, which is, amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
And he made the 75 greatest players, what they just announced with the 75th. But I mean, every player that made the 50 list made the 75 list, so it wasn't surprising. Especially with Walt. He is he is like flat out the New York Knick.
Oh, he is the New York Knick. And he stayed on as a broadcaster with them.
If you listen to him now, he is hilarious because he has no filter. Zion Williamson, who is overweight right now. Yeah. He's like 290 pounds. He was like hugging Julius Randle, and he was literally, Walt Frazier's just like, damn, Zion needs to lose some weight. Like, that's just straight up what he said. There was no filter, no nothing. He was just like, looked at him.
You know what the guy
compared to Julius Randle, he's just like, he's fat.
I think when you hit over the age of 75, I think you get that pass.
Yeah.
That open filter pass.
Yep.
Like
because he has it, and he's still really great. So it's, yeah.
But no, one of the smoothest players of all time. People would always say, like, he never looked like he broke a sweat during a game either.
Yep.
Like, he was just so cool.
Silky smooth.
Collected on that basketball court. One of the things that I think you might have tried to bring it up in the high school thing, but this kind of like summarizes to me like what kind of a player and guy he is. His high school coach said about him, aggressive defense takes priority and hitting an open man over taking a shot.
Yep.
And man, was he awesome at that. Awesome at all three, taking the open shot included. So
no, he was your ideal captain, your ideal point guard. I wonder what he would have been like as a quarterback, but I'm so glad that he gave the Knicks some championships.
Charlie Ward before Charlie Ward almost.
Yeah,
the Knicks point guard.
Yeah, seriously, it is ridiculous how common and how much time passed and that still hadn't changed.
I know.
So there you go.
But Walt Clyde Frazier, everybody.